I've been told by a few coaches and heard from other athletes to avoid lifting weights because it will make you slow. I remember watching a video on Oscar De La Hoya and he was saying he avoids lifting weights because of this reason. And this is absolutely true if you lift weights in a certain way. But if you lift weights correctly, it'll actually make you faster. Just look at Usain Bolt as an example. He's literally the fastest person in the world, and he lifts weights. And pretty much every single track and field sprinter does. Also, a boxer I really like, George Kambosos, who's known for just having super fast hands. He also lifts weights. Same thing with Conor Benn, another boxer I really like. He's also known for having fast hands, and he's always lifting weights in his vlogs, and whenever he makes an Instagram post, it's usually him lifting weights. So yeah, this idea that lifting weights will automatically make you slow is just kind of BS. Even with myself, when I was playing football, I used to not lift weights, but then when I started lifting weights, I became a lot faster. And I think this is because of two reasons. One, because I was able to put more force into the ground, and if you didn't know, the equation for force is mass times acceleration, so I was able to put more mass into the floor because I was stronger. And I just had more control over my body. Since my muscles were just more stable from lifting weights, and my body was just overall less flimsy, I was able to run faster. Faraz Zahabi gave the analogy of like a shopping cart. If you have a shopping cart and you have a wobbly wheel, you're using a lot of effort to just like stabilize the cart where you could be going faster. So in turn, just being more stable makes you faster and more athletic. Now I'm just going to give you 3 quick tips when it comes to lifting weights in a way that'll make you more athletic instead of less athletic. The first tip that I also got from Faraz Zahabi was to train movements and not muscles. As I've said in other videos, this is because when you play sports, you squat something when you're picking someone up, or you push something when you're, playing football and making a block. You don't just stand there with big bulky muscles. So that's why if you're trying to get stronger overall, or even if you just want bigger arms, I would choose something like a pull-up because that's a movement that you're going to be doing in sports anyway, at least if you're doing something like grappling. And I'd choose something like a pull-up over something like a bicep curl because when you do a bicep curl, it's really only working out your bicep for the most part. And of course, I'm not saying to never do a bicep curl or never do an isolation movement. I'm just saying the majority of your exercises should be compound movements where it involves a bunch of different muscles in your body. And not only do compound lifts, but make sure also do explosive lifts also. If you've never done an explosive lift, a good one to start out with would be a box jump. A slightly more intermediate thing I would say would be something like a kettlebell swing. And something a little bit more advanced would be something like a hang clean. But there's tons of different explosive exercises you could do I could talk about in another video. Next tip is not to go too crazy with the bulking if you are doing that, because even if you are doing all the functional exercises and you're doing your explosive lifts and your compound lifts, if you gain 50 pounds of muscle, it's just going to slow you down just from a physics point of view. So yeah, just don't go too crazy with the bulking. And my last tip is just to work out your little muscles also. I'm talking about things that maybe bodybuilders sometimes neglect because they don't show up when you're shirtless. I have a video where I talk about 5 neglected muscles that I'll put in the description below. But yeah, just make sure to work out things like your stabilizers or your hip flexors, because your hip flexors are super important when you're kicking if you're doing martial arts. And also things like your core. And the last thing I'll mention when it comes to lifting weights to become more athletic is that I don't recommend training your core in the traditional way, which is where you just do thousands of sit-ups. I would do it in the way that'll make you more athletic. And I have a video where I talk about how to do that, which I'll link right here. And if you are bulking right now and you're an athlete or someone who's doing martial arts, which means that you are an athlete, I have a video where I talk about 5 ways bulking as an athlete is different than bulking as a bodybuilder. So make sure you check that out if you are bulking. But if you're new to this channel, my goal is to help athletes and martial artists with their goals. So if that sounds like it would help you, make sure to subscribe. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.